Alright, so this video has been a long time coming. So thanks for watching. My name's Stephanie Breen. Welcome to my channel. This is why 4th edition sucks. Dungeons and Dragons. So, I've done other in-depth videos. You can go watch them on Dungeons and Dragons. I've talked about this quite a bit. So let's talk about the core of Dungeons and Dragons. How do you sit down and play Dungeons and Dragons? How do you play Dungeons and Dragons? Well, you take a sheet of paper, either a sheet of notebook paper or a pre-generated character sheet, and you basically fill in the blanks. You have 6 ability scores. You have strength, dexterity, constitution, wisdom, intelligence, and charisma. They don't mean shit. They're just fucking numbers. They just correlate to abilities that basically allow you to do things in the game. You pick a race, elf, dwarf, half-elf, human, halfling, half-orc, whatever, gnome, whatever. And then you pick a class. Fighter, bard, ranger, paladin, thief, or later rogue, wizard, or mage, or magic user, depending on which version you're playing, cleric, or fucking, druid, or whatever. And you roleplay. You sit down at the table with a bunch of polyhedron dice, and you have a game master or a dungeon master who tells a story and asks you questions, and you answer his questions, and they're usually, you're faced with scenario A, what do you do? How do you respond? And then you describe your actions, and then if it requires an ability check, or if it's a combat scenario, then you roll dice and resolve combat. Fighters swing swords, rangers shoot bows and arrows, magic users cast spells, clerics use fucking daggers for whatever. No, they don't use daggers. They can't use pointed weapons. Whatever. Clerics are fighters that can heal, but they can't wear whatever. They can't use swords. So on and so forth. And when you go into combat, you have what are known as hit points. And if you get hit, and there's different methods for determining how you get hit, depending on which version of the game you're playing. If you get hit, you take damage. The Dungeon Master rolls the appropriate dice and tells you how much damage you do, and you subtract that from your hit points. And then to regain hit points, you either sleep, what in modern terms we would say take a long rest, but you sleep, or camp, I guess in the old days, or you drink a healing potion if you have it, or the cleric casts healing spells, or the paladin, if they have it, or you read from a healing scroll if you have it, or you go to a temple and the cleric there heals you, or whatever, you heal. Pretty standard stuff. It's, Final Fantasy, Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, etc., World of Warcraft, whatever. If you've played any role-playing game ever, you pretty much know what Dungeons and Dragons is, because it was literally the world's first role-playing game. So, why is 4th edition not the same? What is so wrong or off about 4th edition? So, let's talk. In Dungeons and Dragons, you have abilities. And you have, in some versions of the game, most versions of the game, you have skills and or feats, depending on if you're using optional rules or not. But the rules exist in every edition of the game. They're just optional in some editions and, part of the core game in other editions. But they exist in every version of the game. So you have skills. So a skill can be something like fishing or hunting or tracking or tree climbing or riding horses or whatever. So if you have a particular skill, then you roll the dice, and having that skill gives you bonuses to the die roll, so it makes it easier for you to succeed at whatever you're trying to do. If you have certain feats, which are just like enhanced skills, more or less, you can add even more bonuses to your die roll and have an even better chance of succeeding. All of this is pretty much standard in every edition of Dungeons & Dragons except 4th edition. Instead of your normal abilities and skills and spells and feats and the stuff you're used to, you have powers. Now you still have the 6 abilities, you still have race, class, etc. But now you have races and classes you've never fucking heard of. You have weird shit like fucking tiefling and dragonborn and all this weird gobbledygook that isn't Dungeons and Dragons. It's lifted right out of World of Warcraft. And you're like, no, this is not Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know what the fuck this is. But whatever. And you have powers. So magic users or wizards or sorcerers have spell slots. And they, in order to cast a spell, they have to assign that spell to a spell slot, which puts it in their spell inventory, and then assuming they have the correct energy, they can cast the spell. Depending on whatever method they use, if they're a wizard or a sorcerer or whatever. But instead of spells and spell slots, in 4th edition, you have powers. What the fuck? So instead of, Burning Hands being a 1st level spell, Burning Hands is a wizard power, I guess. A wizard can use the spell Burning Hands, but instead of calling it a spell and giving you spell slots and you doing what you're normally used to doing, you just use your Burning Hands power. Fuck this. Fuck that. That's my problem with 4th edition. My other problem with 4th edition is what in the God's name is what in the goddamn hell is a tiefling or a dragonborn? Get that fucking rubbish out of my fucking game. I'm pissed off enough that we have half-orcs in the game. We don't need fucking half-orcs. But for Christ's sake, we don't need dragonborn. And tieflings can eat my girl cock. I don't want fucking tieflings in my game. Yes, tieflings and dragonborn carried over to 5th edition, which is unfortunate. But get that shit out of my game. That is not Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons is loosely based on Tolkien and Conan the Barbarian and a few other fantasy medieval books. It is not fucking World of goddamn Warcraft. Alright? So get the goddamn World of Warcraft out of my tabletop RPG. I don't fucking want it. I don't want powers. I don't want, blink and restore your power. Whatever. I don't want it. I hate it. I fucking hate 4th edition. The game sucks balls.